My name is Daniel Carter, and for the last 8 months, I have been living inside a nightmare that nobody believes. It all began in a small fishing town called Blackwater Cove, tucked away along the rugged coastline of Maine. It was the kind of quiet place where everyone knew each other, where nothing exciting ever seemed to happen. At least, that's how it used to be before my son drowned and before he came back. My son, Ethan, was 7 years old. He had messy brown hair, freckles scattered across his cheeks, and enough energy to light up every room he entered. He could make friends anywhere, and after my wife died of cancer 3 years earlier, he became my entire world. Raising him alone wasn't easy, but he gave me a reason to keep going. Then, one rainy afternoon in October, everything changed. We were driving home after visiting my sister when a violent storm rolled in. The roads around Blackwater Cove twisted along steep cliffs overlooking the ocean, but I had driven them countless times before. Suddenly, a truck coming from the opposite direction lost control. I remember seeing its headlights through the rain, slamming on the brakes, and hearing Ethan scream my name. The guardrail shattered, and our SUV plunged down the embankment into the freezing river below. The impact knocked the air from my lungs. Water flooded the vehicle almost instantly. Somehow, I managed to break my window and pull myself outside. Then I tried to save Ethan. His seatbelt was jammed. I pulled at it with everything I had, screaming as the river filled the car around us. But the current was too strong. Before I could free him, the vehicle disappeared beneath the water. I was found nearly an hour later, pulled from the river downstream. Ethan's body wasn't recovered until the following morning. 3 days later, I buried my only son beneath gray skies, while half the town stood silently around me. I thought my nightmare had reached its end. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 weeks after the funeral, someone knocked on my front door just before midnight. Assuming it was a concerned neighbor, I opened it without hesitation. Standing there was Ethan. He was soaked from head to toe, river water dripping from his clothes and pooling around his feet. I couldn't breathe. I threw my arms around him, overwhelmed with relief. His skin felt unnaturally cold, but none of that mattered. My son had somehow come home. The entire town was stunned. The police couldn't explain it. Doctors ran every test imaginable, yet every result came back normal. Some people called it a miracle. Others believed it was impossible. Whenever anyone asked Ethan where he had been, he simply shrugged and quietly replied, "I was in the river." He never said anything more. At first, I accepted it without question. I didn't care how impossible it seemed. I just wanted my son back. But slowly, strange things began to happen. Ethan stopped eating altogether. Days would pass without him touching food, yet he never seemed hungry, weak, or tired. He spent hours staring silently at walls, stood motionless in dark hallways, and every night sat beside his bedroom window, silently watching the river. One night, I woke around 3 in the morning and noticed his room was empty. Panic rushed through me as I searched the house before finally finding him standing barefoot outside in the freezing rain. He faced the river completely motionless. He didn't react when I called his name. Only after I placed my hand on his shoulder did he slowly turn toward me. His eyes weren't cloudy or damaged. They were simply empty, as though nobody was behind them. "Dad?" He whispered, "Do you hear them?" "Hear who?" I asked. "The people under the water." A chill ran through my entire body. I brought him back inside immediately. The next morning, he acted as though nothing had happened. Over the following weeks, things became even stranger. Dogs growled whenever Ethan came near them. Birds scattered the moment they saw him. Even my sister became frightened. One afternoon, she pulled me aside and quietly said, "Daniel, that's not Ethan." Furious, I ordered her to leave and never say those words again. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the growing fear that she might be right. Then the dreams began. Every night, I found myself standing beside the river while dozens of pale faces stared up at me from beneath the surface. None of them spoke. They simply watched. One face always drifted closest to me, Ethan's. But in my dreams, he looked terrified, trapped beneath the water, desperately trying to warn me. The nightmares became so frequent that I eventually stopped sleeping altogether. One night, I woke around 2 a.m. because I heard whispering downstairs. The house felt unnaturally cold. Assuming the television had been left on, I walked into the living room and froze. Dark river water covered the entire floor. Standing within it were dozens of human-shaped figures made entirely of black water. Their faces constantly shifted, appearing and disappearing beneath the rippling surface. Ethan stood among them, smiling. Slowly, every figure turned toward me at exactly the same time. Then they all spoke together in one impossible voice. "He belongs to us." The water suddenly surged toward me. I stumbled backward and slammed the door shut. Seconds later, when I forced myself to open it again, the room was completely dry. Ethan was gone. I found him peacefully asleep in his bed. The next morning, I drove to the town library and spent hours researching Blackwater Cove's history. Eventually, I discovered an old newspaper article describing a tragedy that had happened 80 years earlier. A school bus carrying 23 children had plunged into the very same river. Only one body had ever been recovered. Locals believed the river was cursed, but most people dismissed it as nothing more than folklore. I wasn't capable of dismissing anything anymore. That night, I secretly followed Ethan after he quietly left the house. He walked directly toward the river and stopped at the exact place where our SUV had crashed. Then he stepped into the water. Instead of reaching his knees, the river swallowed him completely. Within seconds, he vanished beneath the surface. I ran forward screaming his name. Suddenly, the river erupted. Hundreds of pale hands burst from beneath the water, grabbing my legs, my arms, and my clothes as they tried to drag me under. Then I heard a voice. "Dad!" It was Ethan, my real son, terrified, crying for help. His face appeared beneath the surface, and for the first time since the accident, I recognized him. The real Ethan was trapped below. Without thinking, I dove into the freezing river. Around me, dead children drifted silently through the darkness, their pale hands reaching toward me as something massive moved beneath us. Deeper in the darkness, I found Ethan wrapped in twisting black tendrils. I grabbed him with both hands. The river fought back. Whatever lived beneath us was ancient, furious, and unwilling to let him go. But I refused to let go. With every ounce of strength I had left, I pulled my son toward the surface. The river exploded around us. Then everything went black. I woke in a hospital 3 days later. Fishermen had discovered both of us unconscious along the riverbank. Ethan was alive, truly alive. When I finally saw him, he burst into tears and hugged me. For the first time in months, his body felt warm, human, normal. He remembered everything. The crash, the drowning, the endless darkness beneath the river, and the thing that had stolen his face before returning home at his place. We left Blackwater Cove shortly afterward and moved thousands of miles away. For a while, life became almost normal again. Almost. Even now, Ethan sometimes wakes in the middle of the night screaming because he says he can still hear the river calling his name. Every year, on the anniversary of the accident, I discover a trail of small, muddy footprints leading from his bedroom window to the front door. There is only one set, and they are always wet, always pointing toward the ocean. I've never told Ethan the truth. One year, I followed those footprints all the way to the shoreline. They ended at the edge of the water. Written in the wet sand, in a child's unmistakable handwriting, were 4 chilling words. He still wants me. Before I could take a picture, the tide washed the message away. I haven't slept peacefully since. People always ask me why I live alone now. They wonder why I keep every curtain tightly closed and why there are 3 deadbolts on my front door. I usually give them the same answer. Bad experience with a roommate. They laugh, and I laugh with them. It's easier that way. The truth is far worse. The man who destroyed my life was never my roommate. He was a complete stranger, and I was the one who invited him inside. My name is Ryan Mercer. 3 years ago, I moved to a forgotten little town called Pine Hollow, hidden deep in the mountains of Montana. I wasn't running from the police, and I wasn't hiding from anyone. I genuinely believed I was starting over. My old life had fallen apart faster than I ever imagined. My construction business went bankrupt after years of hard work, and only a few months later my marriage collapsed as well. Within 6 months, everything I had spent 2 decades building was gone. I sold what little remained and bought an old farmhouse nearly 30 miles from the nearest town. It sat at the end of a lonely dirt road, surrounded by endless pine forest. There were no neighbors, no passing cars, no city lights, only silence. At first, that silence felt like freedom. Every morning, I woke to crisp mountain air drifting through the trees, and every evening I watched the setting sun paint the forest in shades of orange and gold from my front porch. For the first time in years, my mind was finally at peace. I honestly believe my worst days were behind me. That illusion ended during a brutal snowstorm in November. I was driving home after picking up supplies in town when I spotted a man standing beside the highway. Snow was falling so heavily that I could barely see more than a few yards ahead. His jacket was torn, frost clung to his face, and he desperately waved both arms at every passing vehicle. One by one, cars drove past without slowing down. Looking back now, I wish I had done the same. Instead, I pulled over. The moment he climbed in my truck, something fell off. His clothes were covered in snow, yet he wasn't shivering, not even a little. His skin wasn't red from the cold, and his breathing remained perfectly calm. He introduced himself as Nathan and explained that his vehicle had broken down several miles back. His voice was friendly, relaxed, and surprisingly warm. During the drive, we talked about everything: life, work, the mountains, and small-town living. He was intelligent, funny, and easy to talk to. By the time I dropped him off outside a small motel near town, it honestly felt like I had known him for years. Before climbing out, he smiled at me. "Thanks for helping me out." "No problem," I replied. Then his smile grew just a little wider. People don't usually stop for strangers anymore. I shrugged. Guess I'm just old-fashioned. His eyes locked onto mine. "That's exactly why I chose you." At the time, I barely thought about the comment. I wish I had. 3 days later, strange things started happening around the farmhouse. At first, they were small enough to ignore. A kitchen cabinet I never used would somehow be standing open. A dining chair would be sitting several feet away from where I had left it. Lights upstairs would be switched on even though I hadn't been there all day. I convinced myself I was simply adjusting to living alone. Stress can play tricks on the mind, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. Then one morning I walked into the kitchen and froze. Fresh muddy boot prints stretched across my floor. They began near the back door. They continued through the hallway. Then they simply stopped. Not another room. Not at another door. They ended directly in front of a solid wall. I searched every inch of the farmhouse. Every window was locked. Every door was secure. There were no signs of forced entry. no broken glass, no hidden crawl spaces. Yet those footprints remained exactly where they were, almost as if someone wanted me to notice them. The next morning, they had completely disappeared. Not faded, not partially clean away. Gone, as though they had never existed at all. That was the day I started locking every door before going to bed. I checked every window twice. I even kept a baseball bat beside my bed. None of it mattered, because whoever was entering my house didn't need an unlocked door. About a week later, I woke suddenly at exactly 3:14 in the morning. I still don't know what woke me. There had been no loud noise, no nightmare, nothing at all. Yet the moment I opened my eyes, I knew something was terribly wrong. The room felt unnaturally quiet. Even the wind outside had stopped. Slowly, he sat upright. Someone was standing in the corner of my bedroom, perfectly still, watching me. For several endless seconds, neither of us moved. I couldn't breathe. My entire body refused to respond. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the room for just an instant. The corner was empty. I searched every room in the farmhouse until sunrise, checking closets, the attic, under beds, and every locked door. I found nothing. No footprints. No broken windows. No sign that anyone had ever been inside. But deep down, I knew what I had seen. Someone had been standing there. Someone had been watching me while I slept. And somehow, I had the terrifying feeling that whoever had begun feeling more at home inside my house than I did. The real horror began the following morning when I finally decided to review the footage from my security cameras. At exactly 3:14 a.m., my bedroom door slowly creaked open. A man quietly walked inside. He was wearing my clothes. He had my build, my face, my eyes. He walked toward my bed, then slowly turned his head and looked directly into the camera. And then he smiled.